Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Hurley. I'm joined tonight by the Loaf of Bread podcast host, Jason Keelan, the Pro West Meath man, of course, to discuss this weekend's games in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. A few hurling finals to discuss as well between under 20 and lower tier competitions, with the Christy Ring, the Nicky Rackard, and the Laurie Marr finals taking place this weekend. There's also Camogie group games to look after this weekend as well. As always, capture Lelix if you want the best gear around. Check them out if you haven't already. So yeah, Jason, Westmeath are still at the Tailteann Cup and probably one of the favourites to win it. Unfortunately, your hurlers are out of the Joe McDonagh Cup, but yeah, Westmeath good pretty well in the football, I must say, in the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, cheers for having me on again, Matt. I was over in London the other week, doing the commentary and reporting and stuff on Westmeath and London in round two, and fairly comprehensive victory once things got going. They started off really slow in the first 10-12 minutes, and Dermot McCabe kind of alluded to that, I suppose, after the match. And we were chatting. London have some great facilities there, so it was nice that the 80, maybe 70 or 80 Westmeath people who went over were able just to mingle with the team and have the crack and stuff after in the scorching sunshine that it was as well. Once they got going, it was brilliant, and it was only really after the game that I realised that Luke Loughlin kicked 119 on his own, because he was probably I don't know, like London came out with I was chatting to Michael Marr, the London manager, during the week before, and he's kind of saying after the game then that they kind of, if they're going to lose, they'd like to try and keep it in single digits, and they played really well. Like 1-2 in the first 12 minutes was great, but they just sort of collapsed after that a little bit. So if we go into Limerick now at the weekend, sort of winner takes top spot. As for the hurlers, I'd rather not talk about that because, oh God, like, yeah, well done, like the bet Kerry down in Tralee, but it's been brutal. Like, it's been so bad. So many things, like you could spend hours, I won't go into it now, you could spend hours talking about it, and I have spent hours with plenty of people who know more than I do talking about it. But happy enough with Westmeath so far, and plenty more to come hopefully from the footballers.
Hopefully so. We'll see how they get on against Limerick, and we will discuss the Tailteann Cup action later in the podcast, but we will get into the Gaelic games first. And there is obviously one story to start with, and it is really, really sad news coming out of Clare GA, the passing of 21-year-old former under 20 Clare footballer Éanna Ruane, who passed away untimely during the week, obviously, from the Ennis-Tymon GA club in Clare. Clare GA put out a statement early this week to honour Éanna Ruane, saying the Clare GA community is deeply shocked and profoundly saddened by the untimely passing of Ennis-Tymon's Éanna Ruane on Tuesday morning. Éanna was an extremely talented and promising young footballer at both club and county. He represented Clare minor level in 2021, was part of the Clare under 20 panel between 2022 and 2024, and was a star of the Ennis-Tymon CBS football team when the school landed a famous achievement of a provincial double in 2023. Éanna was a second-year student at UL and had already won an All-Ireland Freshers football title with the college. While important achievements and now so important to cherish, these, of course, are only measures of him as an athlete and a player. Above everything else, Éanna was a popular and beloved young man with his whole life ahead of him. His loss was left a void that words cannot fill, and his absence will be felt not only on the field but in the hearts of all who knew him in his community and circle friends in North Clare. At this heartbreaking time, Clare GA extends its deepest condolences and sympathies to his clubmates, his many friends, and above all, to his devastated and heartbroken family, parents Katrina and John, and his siblings Owen, Dara, and Bree Dan, and the extended Ruane and O'Gorman families. We stand in solidarity with them in their grief, and we honour the memory of the young life taken far too soon. Oriyesh Degarev on him. Yeah, Jason, that statement tells you all you need to know about the type of person and player Éanna was, and it's extremely sad news coming out of Clare GA in the past week.
Yeah, it is, yeah. The statement, I suppose, kind of says everything you need to know about him as a player, as a person, I suppose, first and foremost. And it's terrible when someone so young is taken like that, particularly when they're sort of maybe more in the spotlight as well. And everyone kind of feels, regardless of whether you knew Wayne personally or not, you kind of feel the sense of loss from the community as well. And that was, to be fair, a brilliant statement that was put out. All too often they're short and sweet and not really kind of delving into the person. And when someone is so young like that, you give it that little bit of extra effort, and fair play to Clare GA for putting it out. I suppose, well, just while we're mentioning it, another club that I'd be very close to, Mostrom GA down in Longford, lost Alan O'Hara during the week as well. Another young man who had his whole life ahead of him as well, and only sick a couple of weeks, and it was kind of frightening how fast that he passed as well. So just to mention him to all, and the O'Hara family and the Mostrom GA and Longford community as well. But yeah, terribly sad week to lose players like that who are so young.
Exactly, and may Aina rest in peace. Yesterday, Revan Dealish, and he will be sorely missed, not just in Clare but across the whole island in the GA community. And you talked about obviously Mostrim having that passing during the week as well, and of course Aina as well. And more sad news as we go into the first game, I'm guessing as well, like Tyrone against Mayo in Armagh. That's live on Saturday at 7 p.m. on GA Plus. Tyrone did beat Donegal, which is worth mentioning, but we have to mention first, Stephen Rochford will take charge of the Mayo football team this weekend because Kevin McStay has stepped down for now as the Mayo football manager because of medical concerns. And there was a statement actually from Mayo GA that read, the Mayo GA board or from Kevin McStay himself, saying the Mayo GA board and I are in strong agreement that current assistant manager and head coach Stephen Rochford will lead our preparations for upcoming games. We are blessed to have a man of Stephen's calibre, and as a valued member of the management team for the past 3 seasons, he ensures continuity. While I will not in the training field or the sideline on match day, I will be with the management and players in spirit every step of the way. So obviously, first of all, Jason, we have to wish Kevin McStay all the best in terms of his recovery. And it probably just indicates there's more to life than Gaelic football. We're talking about games here, the importance of getting into the All-Ireland knockout stages, and Mayo are in a tricky situation themselves. But of course, Kevin's health and his well-being has to come first.
Yeah, it is. It's a tricky enough one. I only heard the news kind of probably the day after, I'd say, that he was taken to hospital. And obviously when it's something like a heart issue, as been told, it's you have to really, really look after yourself. And I'm sure part of the stress of the job and everything else that goes with it, I'm sure, has been a factor as well. He's obviously an insanely passionate man. Only met him once, I think, up in Croke Park, and came across really, really well. I've only heard generally very good things about him as a person as well. So really hoping that he comes back into the fold for Mayo as well. But obviously Stephen now has a tricky job in his hands to try and sort of steer a team who sort of fell apart in many ways the last day. Try and steer them back towards the road they want. But yeah, certainly wishing Kevin McStay all the best, and looking forward to seeing him back on the sideline or in the punditry seat or whatever it may be as soon as possible.
Exactly. So, and we're wishing Kevin all the best in his recovery, no doubt about it as well. In terms of the game, Jason, you touched on it briefly about Mayo. They lost the game against Cavan, where they were 8 points down with a few minutes left going to stoppage time. And to be honest, Aidan O'Shea's goal and a couple of points really put a Gloucester on the scoreboard from a Mayo point of view. Tyrone, on the other hand, what a win to go up to the Ulster champions in Ballybuffet and beat them in their own backyard. Darren McCurry's in absolutely brilliant form at the moment, 24 points in the championship, high shooting accuracy as well. He's in absolutely brilliant form at this present moment of time. Peter Hart is really clicking into gear and really showing his form that got Errigal here onto the club final as well. And Tyrone seem to be doing well under Malky O'Rourke. This is not going to be an easy game for Mayo, as if they probably didn't know already, even before last weekend's win for Tyrone.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayo were, I don't know what it was exactly. Like the Smith goal right after half-time for Cavan just got them right back into it, and it's like they were able to kick up through the gears, whereas Mayo seemed to kind of capitulate a little bit. Obviously, O'Shea's goal made the scoreline look less sort of terrible than it was, really. Cavan had 5 or 6 players, I think, who kicked a point each, so it's not like it was a one-man job. Like, they really spread the scores out across through Padraig Faulkner and, the rest of the lads who they came from back and front. Mayo just looked, I don't know quite what it was. Like, I kind of like the way that they were playing, but it wasn't working out for them for whatever reason. I don't know if there's something more to it, but it was a very, very off day for them, and really at a time when a win is as good as kind of getting you through nearly to the knockouts at this stage, and to have to go in now and face, as you say, a Tyrone team who are absolutely flying. That 2-pointer from Peter Hart at the end was just absolutely beautiful. I was looking at it going, geez, there's no one taking him on here. I said, is he going to be brave enough and have a pop at the outside of the left? And sure enough, he did. And yeah, I don't know. I just thought Mayo should be offering more. Cavan maybe shouldn't be offering as much, and Tyrone are just, I don't know. Is there an outside chance of them pulling something off? Like, and as you said, Malachy Rourke is just under the radar quite nicely. I'm sure that suits him fine. Doesn't want to be in the limelight, but when you take down, a Donegal team where Michael Murphy is playing well and Langan is back, flying again, and defensively they weren't too bad at all. You're going to start making the headlines, and people are going to have to start stepping up, I think, and taking notice of this Tyrone team, because it could be something of interest later on in the summer.
Exactly. So it will be a very interesting game, no doubt about it. Gavin is coming in with a comment in here. It will be a very Mayo thing to do to come back and beat Tyrone, but I can't see it happening. We'll see what happens, obviously. Sean O'Malley coming in with a comment in here. On paper and form, it's natural to assume a comfy Tyrone win, but it's Mayo. Same really comment as Gavin there. You should expect the performance given the McStay situation, and Tyrone have a rep of being inconsistent. I suppose on that Mayo point, it is the elephant in the room. They could, like the game against Cavan, they were very, very poor, no doubt about it. But this is the sort of game where Mayo's backs are against the wall. They show up all of a sudden. So do you expect that kind of game? Do you expect Mayo to really ramp home a test of Tyrone? And question B, in many ways as well, can Tyrone sustain that pressure if Mayo are going to put it on?
I think a Malachy O'Rourke team can sustain that pressure. It wouldn't be the first time that he's had a team with backs against the wall and managed to pull something out. But Gavin and Sean there are right. It would be just the most Mayo thing on earth to just turn this around. And it's not like they need motivation. Like, the motivation, is unfortunately probably in a hospital ward at the moment, or maybe at home recovering. Like, it's not like they need anything like that. Stephen Rocher just, very simply says, I'm sure, a couple of calm things beforehand, just lets them know what's at stake. Essentially, the rest of their summer is potentially at stake. That's really what it is for Mayo, for a county who need to be there at the business end of the championship. This defeat wouldn't be acceptable at all to anybody. Tyrone, I can't see why they wouldn't be able to face up to a Mayo team, even if they are defiant, even if O'Shea goes in full forward and they start pelting in long balls at them. Like, they're a strong, physical bunch of lads who won't shy away from a fight or a scrap. So I don't see why Tyrone couldn't do it. But as the two lads said, and as you said, it would be just the most Mayo thing on earth for them to come back from being beaten by Cavan, manager in hospital, things just fall to pieces, and suddenly they come back, win the game comfortably, or win it by whatever, and they win on the board, and the knockouts look a bit closer. Yeah, it would be the most Mayo thing. They're going to need Ryan O'Donoghue, though, to step up. Not that he isn't stepping up as such, but because he is so good and brings so much of their scores, that they're going to need him to do a whole lot. And Tyrone's defenders are pretty touch-tight lads, and they're not going to give him a whole lot of space. But if he performs, maybe Mayo get a win, but I still think Tyrone will turn up, and it'll be a good game, though. I reckon it will be an intense battle. There's too much on the line for both sides to not go hell for leather at it. It won't be a sit back, cagey affair, I'd say.
I don't think it will be either, and both sides will definitely go for it. I'm going to go for Tyrone win. Probably an obvious prediction there, but I can't see Mayo turning around in a short space of time and beating this Tyrone team, especially after the Tyrone performance against Donegal last week, and they looked really, really on top and really on fire, and they look like serious All-Ireland contenders. For Mayo, it's going to be a difficult job. Stephen Rochford, there might be a bit of a bounce off him. I'm not sure what the situation will be at the weekend, but I'm going to go for Tyrone win, but slightly so. We'll move on to this game as well. Also the same group with Group 1. This is on Sunday at 2 p.m. in Kingspan, Breffni. Cavan against Donegal. Tricky situation in this one because Donegal are going in off the back of a loss. Cavan are going in off the back of a win over Mayo. So we could have a situation where both predicting Tyrone wins. If Cavan win this game, they'll be on 4 points and Donegal will be on 0. And all of a sudden, Donegal and Mayo is a knockout game. I don't think we'll be in that situation, I'll be honest with you, Jason. I think Donegal might get over the line, but there's always hope for Cavan, and they did show the Mayo game some bright sparks.
They did, yeah. Like, I would struggle to find a human being, never mind a Cavan person, who said that Cavan might be top of Group 1 by the end of 2 games on maximum points. And, Donegal are the wounded animal. Cavan are the maybe a little bit shell-shocked side who are kind of like, right, what do we do now? That we're at these dizzying heights of having beaten Mayo in the group stage. But like you said, if Donegal turn up the same way they did against Tyrone, they'll win the game. They just came up against a very, very on-form Tyrone team that day. I don't think Cavan have the same ability. They don't have the same, threats maybe that Tyrone have. I know they did get a raft of scores across the pitch the last day against Mayo, but it was, quite a few one-pointers there, bar maybe Smith and the likes. I think Donegal will win comfortably, and I think once Langan is in form and once Murphy is there or thereabouts, they should win comfortably enough. No disrespect to Cavan, like it's brilliant to see them in it, but and doing so well. But when you've got Langan, Murphy, Finbar, Roarty, those kind of lads like going well, then I don't see anything except a Donegal victory, to be honest.
Dropping in here from Sean as well. Once again, another crucial do or die game not being shown on TV. Yeah, again, that's pretty poor, to be honest with you. Yeah. Gavin is saying Cavan were great against Mayo without Paddy Lynch for most of the game. If he starts, that could be huge for Cavan. 2 very good points there. I'll start off with Gavin's point there about Paddy Lynch, and the fact as well that Donegal, 15 of their points out of the 20 came from either Michael Murphy or Michael Langan. And considering Paddy Lynch will probably start for Cavan as well, is that a concern for Donegal in many ways? Do they need more scores to step up?
I think they just need the likes of, say, Brendan McCole maybe to do what he did against Cavan the last day, and it kept him scoreless or near scoreless, I think, from play. So if you can nullify the threat, then you just let your attackers do what they normally do. And I don't think Cavan, as good as the likes of Rory Faulkner and all them are, Michael Murphy just is a bit of an enigma. Like you could put 2 lads on him and somehow we still manage to find shooting chances. Doesn't matter how far out the pitch he is, but I don't know. Like Paddy Lynch, yeah, obviously it's such a high score, never would make a great difference to the Cavan team. But he's, a long-term injury technically coming back, and it may not be a case of jumping straight back in. So I still think Donegal will be comfortable, I would say, at the end of it all. Paddy Lynch or not, I think Donegal is too much in the bank.
Yeah, I'd probably go for Donegal as well. I think Donegal will be much better in this game than they were against Tyrone, and maybe it was a wake-up call that Donegal needed. Sean is saying here, I think it is this one to be close to 5 to 6 points in it, but Donegal will win. Yeah, I think Donegal will get over the line as well and get their All-Ireland group stage back on track. Before we get on to Group 2, just a comment in there about the TV and things. Yeah, Sean had that comment as well, a crucial do or die game not being shown on TV. There's, out of my calculations, I think there's 4 out of the 8 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship games not being shown on TV this weekend. Only one of out of the other 4 that are being shown is shown on RT2. The other 3 are shown on GA Plus as well, which is worth pointing out. Do you think something needs to be done about that? Should there be more streaming services? Let's say, like for League of Ireland TV, for example, you could stream every game, Premier Division, First Division, things like that. And considering both Group 2 games are not being shown, Cavan Donegal is not being shown, and Meath Roscommon is not being shown either. And 4 of those games are more so do or die knockouts championship games in a way as well. So, like, it is a shame that those sorts of games aren't being shown. And I think with the Champions League final as well on this weekend, it might be a missed opportunity for the GAA considering so little games are being shown.
Yeah, I think if I was to look at it slightly differently, I think the GAA are down significantly on ticket sales for games. And I know I was given the number last year of what it was, and I can't remember it offhand, but it was percentage-wise, it was down a lot. And there were questions asked about what the issues are and all that kind of stuff. So I think the main reason that there isn't more streaming like a League of Ireland TV, as you said, or that kind of thing, is purely because they don't want people sitting at home watching them. They want people to be there, you know. And I think that's kind of the main reason for it. I'm sure if someone came along and offered to stream all the games, I'm sure that, you know, and another time if attendances were up, they'd be like, yeah, go ahead, we can afford to lose a few people to stay at home, the crowd will still be good. But like last weekend, I can't remember which of them was, there was only a crowd of about 5,000 or 6,000. I know, was it Armagh's game, or one of them had about 15,000, like, which is great attendance, but like even the likes of Tyrone, I don't think brought a huge amount of fans to the Donegal game, which maybe was saying that they didn't expect to win, or maybe it's because they just decided, you know, we'll watch at home. But I think the GAA's motive is more to do with ticket sales, and maybe who has, I just see actually Sean's literally said what I was about to say, who has contracts for what, because I know it's not all straightforward. There was a talk, like even I remember up there a couple of years ago and seeing Disney Plus were potentially a bidder for the GAA. So, you know, it's all about contracts and that. But I think ticket sales been down is probably the main reason for it. But it would be great to have them all, of course.
Absolutely. So, and Gavin with another comment in here, the pre-season was scrapped, so I don't see why the league didn't start earlier. So this isn't that. So there isn't that many games compact across 4 codes. I completely agree with that comment. Why couldn't the league start mid-January? I mean, it's boggers belief, to be honest with you. And then Sean says here, I can only assume it's because of contracts, but why can't it be put on TG Car? And it's only at 2, so why can't RT do a double header like they usually do? That's the strange thing. RT are only having 1 game on Sunday, and that's Armagh against Dublin. That's the only game they're showing across the whole weekend. Like, across the whole weekend, I think the only 2 main sports events that they have on is the Champions League final between PSG and Inter on the Saturday evening, and the Dublin and Armagh game. That probably isn't really enough in terms of growing a product. Brian is saying in here, while there is no hurling this weekend, I think it's disgraceful that the tickets of Munster hurling has gone up by a fiver. It will be €50 for standard, €40 for terraces, if you could get any. That's the thing, Brian, because he's going through clubs. So, yeah, that's probably a situation we'll probably discuss in the Munster hurling final preview next week. But and Brian is saying we're living in the cost of living.
Yeah, that's steep. That's a lot of £50 for a stand ticket. Jeez, that's like, I'm pretty sure I got flights and a match ticket in Old Trafford for cheaper than that at Christmas time. But yeah, like it is frustrating, the lack of TV. I don't know, to be fair to GA Plus, they are doing a really good job. Like, and they're bringing all that they can within the reason of their contract and whatever they've been told they're allowed to do or not do. So there's only probably so much Grania and Dashling can do with presenting in different places and all that kind of stuff as well. And yeah, it would be great if there was more. And obviously, yeah, as Brian said there in the comments, no hurling on this weekend really either. Like it's a bit of a mystery why there isn't a double header though. Like that would be the simple one for RT. But look, we're not neither of us are Kevin Backhurst, unfortunately. Maybe it's part of the cutback.
Exactly, yeah. But there is a double hitter in Croke Park, but GA Plus is showing the Fermanagh and Wexford game in the Tailteann Cup, and then RT are showing Dublin and Armagh, which is fair enough, to be fair. Fermanagh and Wexford and Croke Park. We'll get on to the Atlantic Cup a bit, but that's a strange neutral venue. Fermanagh, Wexford, just a stat there. We'll get on to the Atlantic Cup a bit, but Wexford have played 2 games in football in Croke Park and they played none in hurling this year.
Jeez. It would normally be the other way around.
It would be, yeah. That's really a strange thing. But we'll move on to Group 2, and it is Cork against Kerry in Super Valley Park. This is on GA Plus at 4:45 at Saturday evening. I am going to the game, obviously, as usual from this year, obviously covering for the Southern Star. But to be honest, Cork had a difficult enough defeat against Meath last weekend. Probably wasn't the best performance for the players. I just see the Kerry team has been released there, and Sean O'Shea, Paddy Clifford and David Clifford are all in the same team. Paddy Clifford's at number 11, Sean O'Shea is at number 12, David Clifford's at 13, Paul Ganey for good measure is at number 14 as well. This is going to be a difficult day out for Cork, but given the Munster semi-final, do you give the Rebels any chance this weekend?
Maybe some. Like, I remember when obviously I was down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh when I met you that night when Westmeath were playing Cork, and like I know there was only a point in it at the end, and it was a phenomenal game of football, end-to-end stuff. But Cork played like really, really nice attacking football. Like, they really utilised the rules really well. Chris O'Jones was obviously lethal with like 3-4, 3-5 that night. So the Cork since then that I've seen, what have we seen them twice? I think since then, still very, very good and heading, I think, in the right direction. But coming up against a Kerry team, and you just listed out the lads there, like, you know, Clifford, O'Shea, Ganey, like, that's enough to. They're probably the 4 of them play on their own against the 15. Like, they probably come out with a few scores and a half decent result, and then you throw in the likes of Gavin White and them. You know, Gavin scored a goal the last day as well. Like, they've pace in abundance. They've scored threats from every angle, and yet they're still just ticking along as if they're not even really trying yet. So for Cork, it's a little bit like kind of Mayo here. It's backs against the wall. You're gonna have to come out fighting. I suppose you would be much more in the know of the Cork setup than me anyway. But maybe you give them more of a chance or less of a chance.
It's a strange one, really. Kerry are the All-Ireland favourites. That is the obvious thing. But normally Cork, weirdly enough, do put it up to Kerry. And you look at the Munster semi-final, like, they were absolutely brilliant that night. And it was, considering Meath beat Dublin actually the week after, that made it even more disappointing that Cork didn't finish the job then. They didn't break that glass ceiling. And yeah, look, I still think there's good performances in them. Sean McDonald's performing well in the forwards in his first season. Chris O'Jones, as you mentioned there, absolutely lethal. Brian Hurley won't be available this weekend. Got an injury in training before the Meath game, so I don't think he'll be in action. Cathal O'Malley will probably start in this game. You would imagine Mark Cronin will be in the forward line as well. Sean Brady's going to be back, which is a huge boost. He was suspended for the Meath game because of his harsh red card, I'll say, against Kerry, for the foul on Joe O'Connor. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very difficult day. I think, in a way, it will be positive to keep the score down, considering score difference, and then go hell for leather for the Roscommon game in the last game. And I think that's probably the way that Cork will go about it. But John Cleary I asked John Cleary the question about the Kerry game after the Meath game in Navan, actually, and he said, we'll go hell for leather as usual next week. We'll give it our all. We'll go blitzkrieg for this game. So they are going to give it their all. There's no doubt about it.
They had a desperate amount of turnovers, though, didn't they, against Meath? So that was a big problem from what I remember watching the game. They'll have to cut that out, surely. Definitely,
yeah. Just the kickouts were very, very poor as well. I think the Cork team kind of misread the wind in many ways. Like, the kick-out, Micheál Martin thought the kick-out would go between the two 65s like it usually did. But once he kicked the ball, it went all the way to the Meath 45. And the Meath players were just there standing alone, which something has to be fixed there. It was a wicked wind, obviously, in Navan, but something has to be fixed there in terms of the kick-out strategy. Who's important to that, actually, is Sean Walsh from Mitchelstown. Like, once he came off the bench against Kerry in particular, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I thought he was absolutely superb. And he did play the first few league games. I think the last game he started, funnily enough, was against Westmeath. I think he's been absolutely brilliant in his first year, and he probably would add something extra dimensional in midfield as well. It would be interesting to see if he's fit and ready to go for this game. We'll have to see the fitness situation. Matty Taylor as well went off injured against Meath. So yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see that as well. Sean O'Malley saying, sorry, Matt, but I think Kerry will have a good win. Won't be easy, but I think Kerry will be more ready than they were in the Munster Championship. The thing is, Sean, Kerry were ready in the Munster Championship. Cork just put up a brilliant performance. I don't think Kerry played badly at all that night. They were battling in front, in fairness, until the Paddy Clifford sending off, granted. But Cork really battled into that game with the 2 pointers and obviously the goal from Chris O'Jones. So that will give them a lot of confidence. And Cork really put it up to Kerry nearly every time. I think they'll put it up to them, but I think Kerry will probably win this weekend. But obviously, I was seeing a clip from the RT podcast as well. Nigel Dunn from Offaly, he recently retired from intercounty football. He was on the podcast on RT this week. And he did say about Cork, Cork's bad is bad, indicating that if Cork are bad, they're a 0 or a 1 out of 10. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There was, I can't remember it now, but I remember watching a Cork game before and I was thinking, Jesus, like, this is horrendous stuff. This isn't the Cork like I would have known, and even like I think back to the 2010 All-Ireland final, like, and grinding out victories and just having determination and stuff. And probably a fair point, I would say, from Nigel Dunn. No more than quite a few teams who are strong. When they're bad, it's capitulation. When they're brilliant, they're phenomenal. So, yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Sean is probably correct, I would say, though. I think a win for Kerry is probably just having Clifford, O'Shea, Gainey, and a solid enough backline. They're fine. And then you've Joe O'Connor, of course, in the middle, who is destroying people, who are in the middle as well. So, yeah, I think Kerry will win. But, yeah, hopefully the good Cork turns up, not the bad Cork.
Hopefully so, yeah. And hopefully Cork too win this weekend. But I'm sure John Cleary will have a plan for this Kerry team. And the team was actually, after the Kerry game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, like, obviously Jack O'Connor spoke with all the media, including the Cork media, like myself. And like, one person asked the question, what did you learn tonight, Jack? And Jack was saying Cork football is alive and well that night. And the next game, Cork lose against Meath. So just one more question. I think Kerry, we're both agreeing Kerry will win it. But do you think Jack was kind of like, bigging Cork up a bit that night, or was he genuinely correct?
Cork football is alive and well when it's alive and well. It's unfortunately not consistently alive and well. It goes through periods of the flu and sickness and all that kind of stuff and bounces back again. It's just, it needs a bit of a consistency. Like if you compare them to Kerry, like Kerry at their worst are still a formidable side who nobody wants to come up against. Whereas a Cork at their worst, teams would be thinking, we've got a great chance here. Like Kerry, I think Kerry, a bad Kerry team came to Cusack Park when I was out in Australia. I can't remember what year was it, 2013 or 2011, something like that, and beat Westmeath by a point in the last minute from Mullingar. And that Kerry team on paper were fantastic. On the pitch for a couple of games that season, they were atrocious. And but still though, he couldn't beat them, whereas a bad Cork team on the day are very beatable. So I think Kerry will be looking to kick on a little bit too. I think Jack O'Connor knows as well. He might have been that cute Kerryness about him, maybe, with that comment as well, I would say.
I would say so, yeah. I genuinely, just for that split second, I thought he was being, he was being serious. But yeah, it's difficult to comprehend, obviously, when Jack O'Connor does come up with those quotes. Shawnee Kay is saying Kerry will be very undercooked coming to the quarterfinals. They had a very easy day out against Roscommon the last day. Against Cork and Meath, though, they might put up more tests. We'll have to see out of all that. Gavin O'Reilly saying here, from his perspective, yeah, Cork's up for it against Kerry, but they need to be more consistent. And Sean is saying here, Cork, Matt, would you say the Cork footballers are similar to the Dublin hurlers?
Quite a comparison.
It is, to be fair. Like, in terms of player,
better on paper, not performing as consistently on the pitch. Maybe
so, and another thing as well, player availability. Because the Dublin, when you look at the Dublin footballers, You have Kieran Kilkenny, you have Conor O'Callaghan and Cormac Costello, Owen O'Donnell now, who would walk into the Dublin hurling team. With Cork, you have Brian Hayes, you have Damien Cahalane, you have other players in Jack Hallan. You have those players that would walk into the Cork football team, but they chose hurling. And to be fair, Brian Hayes is an excellent hurler, and he's up there with one of the best hurlers in the country this year. But he's an equally, absolutely brilliant footballer, and he would add to that Cork midfield as well. So in that light, I think they are very, very similar. In terms of success, look, Dublin hurlers haven't won an All-Ireland since when? The 1950s, or even before that. Cork footballers did win the All-Ireland in 2010. So, I don't know. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to comprehend, really. But yeah, what would you think about that? Would they be similar, do you think, Dublin hurlers, Cork footballers?
Yeah, I was kind of looking at it more, player availability, yeah, it's obviously right. I was kind of looking at it more from the point of, for, the county, with, if you need the most clubs, I think, in the county, or in the country, I should say. So technically, even if they are, separate clubs in hurling football and stuff, I would still expect Cork football to be maybe stronger than what it is, and then particularly Dublin hurling, like I taught in Dublin for the last 15 years, the shift from football to hurling in the last number of years with kids is phenomenal. Like when Liam McCarthy came into our school the first year with James McCarthy and the lads, there was an escort by the guards, there was the fanfare, the whole lot. By the time it came in, the 300 million time after he came in, he got dropped off by a taxi, and I walked him out at the end, and he just stood and left the Sam Maguire down by the traffic lights and stood waiting for a taxi. There was nobody with him, no fanfare, no nothing. So the kids have now shifted towards hurling because the lack of success there for Dublin is something that they can achieve potentially in the future. And maybe Cork have underachieved a little bit, and the Dublin hurlers, for the numbers they have to choose from, have certainly underachieved as well. So, but I just say player availability is obviously a thing as well. But yeah, it's a decent comparison. It's an interesting one. I wouldn't have ever put a football and hurling team like that side by side, but it is a good one. Last hurling for Dublin in 1938. Good man, Brian knows his stuff. There you go.
He knows his stuff, definitely. Yeah, Brian O'Reilly. Thank you, Brian, for the comment in there about the Dublin hurlers in their All-Ireland hurling drought. And another point to mention, obviously, the Fianna winning the All-Ireland in hurling. You have the indication that Dublin hurling is on the way back, and obviously I was on the brunt of it, obviously being part of the SARS backroom team in that All-Ireland final. It wasn't great at all, but look, you have to give credit to Dublin hurling. They are making great strides, and they finished third in Leinster this year, and we'll talk about Dublin hurling as the weeks go on, I'm sure. Looking at the other Group 2 game, and that is Roscommon against Meath in Dr. Hyde Park on Saturday at 6 p.m. Another game not being shown on TV or GA+. Not sure why, to be honest, because this is a very evenly matched game. Very, very interesting one to look at, this game in particular. But I'll say this, Jason, I think Meath were very, very poor at stages against Cork, and I think Cork were, as John Cleary said in the post-match interview, the game was there for taking. Both sides performed poorly at times, but Meath took the chance and Cork didn't, and that was the difference in the game. I think Meath have a lot of gears to go up on. Roscommon's form, I just think the confidence is degraded at this stage. They've lost by 10 points against Kerry. They lost by hockey against Galway as well. They've only won 2 games out of their last few against Cork, when obviously Cork were low themselves in the league, and London in the Connacht Championship. They obviously drew against you guys when you guys should have beat them in Cusack Park as well. So they're on a low wave at the moment. I think Meath could win this game. What do you think?
I'd be probably looking at Meath as well. It's probably not on telly because nobody likes Meath, let's be honest, or Roscommon. No, but I think Roscommon are certainly underachieving for the ability that Davy Burke has as a manager to instill the best in players. I don't think they've shown it. Last day out, you probably know more than me, but I remember reading afterwards, I think none of the Roscommon full forward line scored, or only, I think a total of 6. None of the half forward line scored, and the full forward line, I think, only got 3 or 4 from play. Now, that's never going to win you a football match at school level, at nursery level as a 4-year-old. That's never going to win you a game. So they've got to do more. You're completely right about Meath. Patchy. If Ger Brennan said Louth were suffering a hangover after the Leinster final, I think Meath were kind of suffering a little bit as well. But to be fair to Robbie Brennan and Morris in particular, I thought was really, really good. And it's terrible for a Westmeath man to say that I've actually kind of enjoyed watching Meath in recent times, but I have. And as a traditionalist of football, it's actually great to see them back doing all right. And I don't mind them doing well, to be fair, because there's no rivalry between Meath and Westmeath. Obviously, we've nothing to rival it on, success wise, really. But I do like the fact that they're getting back up there. Morris and Matthew Costello.
Matthew Costello, yeah, excellent player.
Yeah. So like Meath have potential. Obviously, they had the two young lads trying out for goals, I know, in the last couple of years. And once they kind of cement players down in positions kind of more long term, I think, given Robbie Brennan's kind of track record at club level anyway and elsewhere, there's potentially something more in that Meath team maybe. But Roscommon are going to have to up more than 6 or 7 gears, because God, they were woeful, and Enda Smith really carrying the team, but not scoring. So it's like no Enda, no party kind of really for Roscommon. I think Meath will win comfortably.
Jeez, that's a big prediction. I do think Meath will win the game. Roscommon have to show something though, and Gavin is a pro Roscommon man, obviously commenting in with 2 comments in here. Massive game for Roscommon, into Smith in the forwards, which might be he's been to his potential this year. He also said in the league, Brian Stack didn't play and Meath got 2 quick goals. I'm hoping with him back that doesn't happen again. Yeah, and that league game as well. Meath really blew the water out of Roscommon in that game as well. Like, what really disappointed me about Roscommon down in Kerry as well was how slow they were in possession in the first half in particular, when Kerry were probably just easing into the game a small bit. Roscommon were holding the ball for, I'd say, 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes. And if you know me, I hate that kind of possession-based football.
Yeah.
Roscommon did this constantly, and they got nothing out of it at the end of the attacks, which was quite concerning in many ways. So their form, their style of play, the fact their half forward line, as you correctly said, Jason, didn't score anything against Kerry. Their forwards from play, or full forwards from play, didn't score much either. Like, in all aspects, Roscommon are really, really struggling, and maybe a win over Meath will kickstart their season. Worth mentioning as well, in the All-Ireland group stage, in 2 years, they've only won 2 games against Sligo and against Cavan. That's quite concerning as well.
It is a little bit, yeah. I'm trying to remember as well. It was Connor Cox, like their joint highest or second highest scorer, and I think he had like 10 minutes off the bench or something.
Yeah.
Which, like, that doesn't speak volumes for the forwards really. And
their joint highest scorers were their centre back Ronan Daly with 3 points, Connor Cox and Durbin Burt, who both came on as subs, 3 points each.
That tells you kind of everything, and I'd be exactly like you with the possession football thing. Drove me insane to the point that I was getting turned off GA quickly. Recently, the rules thankfully have changed it so much, but the rules are great if you utilise them. Like Westmeath, to be fair to us, we are utilising them in attack so well, as you saw that night down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Now Cork also utilised them well, but it's the lack of runners off the shoulder for shooting opportunities that seem to, from what I saw, now I saw extended highlights, I'll be honest, didn't see the whole game, but it seemed like nobody was willing to come out and have the go. And as managers used to say to you from underage up, have a shot, and if you're going to miss it wide, at least have a go. Whereas this possession thing, like that's dead now, realistically, and they just don't seem to be following whatever it is. And I'm surprised that the way it panned out for them the last day, how bad they were, because that should have been the kind of game that they would have been up for, and Davey would have had them up for it, I'm sure, as well. But I know, who was it, Cavan or Brian, or someone mentioned there about Brian Stack been back. Yeah, a little bit of solidity will do you no harm, but I think the bigger problem is with 10 to 15. If Connor Cox and Deirdre Murta are getting 6 points off the bench and less time than the other lads had, something is wrong. So changes have to come for Roscommon, but I'm going to say a comfortable Meath win.
the funny thing is they just haven't evolved at all. Like I do remember Roscommon having this keep ball possession thing against Dublin, and it did work coincidentally for a clip where Kieran Murtagh put it over the bar. I think I remember it. The clip went viral on social media, but they haven't got out of this tactic, and it clearly isn't working. Like they did this possession base. I remember this against Cork at the preliminary quarter-final down in Parky Keefe as well, where they kept the ball for, I'd say it was about 4 or 5 minutes, and eventually they turned over the ball because they fouled the ball. They bounced it twice or something like that, and it was so vital. Then Kevin O'Donovan gets the winning score for Cork, and they're out of the championship. Yeah. They keep on doing it, and as the great quote says, that doing the same thing over and over and over again is a sign of insanity.
Yeah. The definition of insanity: doing the same thing, expecting different results. And it has to be mentally trying as well to keep the ball and do nothing with it for that long. And I remember the clip you're saying when the Sunday game played it in fast forward as well and put the clock up just to show how long they kept the ball for. That's fine if you have someone at the end who's going to pop it over. Maybe in Croke Park that day and other days that they had Murtagh and etc. on the shoulder to pop it over, how to have a pop at least. There was nothing like that against Kerry. They might as well have been playing basketball. The only thing they could have improved Roscommon's game was putting in a shot clock, to force them to actually shoot, because otherwise it was just a non-event really. And I don't think it did Kerry any favours either, because they were probably bored out of their minds at the same time. Just the new line I've heard several times, I used it in commentary one of the days, is I'll meet you at the arc, and it's kind of become the system for a couple of teams, but those teams were able to transition fast, whereas as you said, it was numbingly boring watching the highlights when Roscommon were going forward, because you never knew what they were going to do. You never knew if they were going to shoot or if they were just going to mess it up. So yeah, I'm still not convinced by them, and I'm still not convinced that even Brian Stack coming back, and maybe if they start Conor Cox from playing for 40 minutes and let him try and get a heap of scores. But Meath I think are growing nicely, and Robbie Brennan won't want to lose momentum now, so no point beating Cork and then losing to Roscommon, who are on downhill slope. So I still think Meath need to do it.
Yeah, I think Meath will get over the line as well, which means the Cork and Roscommon game is a knockout game in the last game according to our predictions there. So that's going to be big. Look at Group 3, and both these games are not being shown. Starting off with Down against Louth at Park Esler and Newry on Saturday at 5:30. Interesting enough game considering Louth lost the first day against Monaghan. The goals really kept them in the game, but you'd imagine Louth would be over the celebrations by now at Leinster and would be going full hell for leather for this game. Down more impressive against Clare, but let's be honest, it's a Clare team that have been in Division 3 for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a bigger test, no doubt, for Down, but promising signs all the same for Conor Rafferty's men.
Yeah, it's probably no slight against Clare maybe, but the Munster draw at Christmas time, whatever it is, essentially determines who's going into the knockouts. So Clare would have had a good look at that and gone, grand, that'll be us in the group stages. So, and bar a couple of half decent performers, they're the lowest ranked team in my eyes, really, that's in the competition. Down strolled, would be fair to say again. This was one I caught the highlights of, and it was just mostly Down scores. Very little else to kind of talk about. It was fairly one-sided, fairly routine, fairly mundane, I would say, probably as well, for a lot of people who watched in as well. And Clare have nothing in particular to kind of look for. And Louth, though, on the other hand, despite the hangover and everything, Sammy Mulroy still got 2 goals. Tommy Dernan still got 2 goals. He still scored 4 something in a game where they were, literally dying physically, probably, and mentally, and emotionally from, breaking 60 odd years of a heartache. And yet they still managed to score 4 something in a game that was really entertaining, really end to end. And a good Monaghan team as well, that they came up against, if it was a weaker team, I still think they would have got through with the hangover and the whole lot. It just happened to be that, Beggan had a really good game with kicking a couple of 45s, and Monaghan were just a bit more on song. But it's a kind of a big one for Louth now, because Down will fancy their chances, even though Clare might have been a bad omen for them nearly, because they'll go into it thinking, oh, we're, God's gift, whereas Clare are just terrible, So I think Louth will have to be a bit more solid defensively. They were just way too open against Monaghan at times, and again, fatigue, whatever else. But it could be the tightest game of the weekend in many ways. Could be a very interesting one. I'm looking forward to that one in particular.
It's definitely going to be the most interesting game of the weekend. No doubt about it. Considering Louth winning Leinster down on form at this present moment in time, so it really put it up to Donegal in the semi-final of Ulster as well. I do think Louth will get over the line, but ever so slightly. I've been impressed with this Down team, but that Clare game didn't really test them at all. And I just feel like Louth have got the test so far, whereas Down arguably haven't as much. So I feel like that Louth will have enough to get over the line in this game, even away from home. Gavin is saying here, not much in the lead between these two. Down Louth could be a draw. It could be. Considering Down Louth home advantage, and they are moving well at the moment. We'll have to see. We'll probably just go briefly over this game, because I think both of us will have the same prediction versus Monaghan against Clare in St. Tyrone Park in Clones on Sunday at 4 p.m. I think the only thing that might drive on Clare, and maybe I'm clutching at straws here, is playing for Aina Rowan, who obviously, as we mentioned at the start, Joe sadly passed away. That might be the only thing that might drive Clare on to do it for him. But other than that, I just feel like this Monaghan team are really moving on at a good kilt at the moment, and I can't see anything other than a Monaghan win.
Yeah, I think probably the most comfortable win the weekend will be for Monaghan. It will be nice for Clare to do, put in a solid performance, in memory of Aina. Unfortunately, it isn't going to turn them into better footballers overnight or over a week. They're not at the level. And I'd said they're there on the basis of fortunate draw more than anything else. So no, a Monaghan victory, comfortably double-digit victory, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say so as well. The sooner we move on from that game, the better. I think Monaghan will absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Aaron Graham is saying here, Monaghan will be a dangerous team for anyone in the knockouts, absolutely. And they're more or less in an all-out of quarterfinal. If they beat Down in the last game and beat Clare, they're expected to do this weekend, they are in the all-out of quarterfinals, and anything can happen. They're a good draw, and you never know with Monaghan. Now, I did say in my predictions on TikTok that Monaghan would be a dark horse. I wouldn't be shocked if they got to one all-out semi-final.
Yeah.
There you go. But we'll have to see what happens later in the summer. We'll move on to Group 4, and the only game on RT2 is Dublin against Armagh in Croke Park on Sunday at 4 p.m. A few weeks ago, look at this game, we would have said, okay, Armagh have a serious opportunity to hammer Dublin here in Croke Park. Whereas Armagh have done really, really well, and being All-Ireland champions, Rian O'Neill's come back into the team. Conor Turbett scored 1-2 off the bench. Brian McCambridge got a goal as well from the fence against Derry. They looked really, really good. They have new players coming in like the likes of Tomas McCormack and Callum O'Neill, who have really excelled. Ryan McQuillan's been one of my favourite players for Armagh this season. He's been absolutely exceptional. This is not a slight on Armagh. It's just the fact that Dublin beat Galway a few weeks ago. They seem to be back now. This is a quite interesting game to call.
It is, yeah. And I think if there's a prize for the best strategic move of the year, it should go to Desi Farrell for putting Sean Bugler at 6, because it is such it's maybe an obvious move in some way for people maybe, and I know my friend plays club football with him up in Dublin as well and would have kind of said the same thing, but it just changes the dynamic, I think, of that team. Like, I wouldn't have said Dublin from a couple of months ago would have been within 5 or 6 points of Galway in that opening game, and then they pull out the likes of Lorcan O'Dell and a few others as well, and McGuinness, of course, and then I don't know, there's just something very solid about Dublin with Bugler at 6, and then you've got Luka Modric, Kieran Kilkenny, still running the show without looking like he's even breaking a sweat half the time. But then Armagh also bring their own, brilliant kind of threat as well. Like Barry McCambridge, every time I hear his name, I assume that he scored a goal, because he just seems to be a lad who just finds the back of the net all the time, and All-Ireland final, of course, everything as well. Maybe throwing away such a big lead in the Derry game and only winning by whatever 4 or 5 might have frustrated Armagh a little bit and frustrated McGeaney and Donaghy, and it might push them on a little bit for this. They might be a bit more defensively solid to concede to 16, 17, whatever it was. I think this is going to be an absolute blinder of a game because there's so many lads on the pitch who can kick big scores from distance. And even though I know someone was saying there, Gavin was saying in the comments, a little inconsistent this year, which is true, but the only way to stop inconsistency is to become really, really consistent. And there's no doubt that Dublin team could become. I think a lot of people were baffled when people were writing off Dublin saying this team are going over. This team are absolutely going places. They just needed a couple of weeks and a couple of months just to fix and tweak a couple of things. And Bugler to 6 is just, I think it's a match made in heaven and cracking game. I'm going to let you call this one first because I don't know where to go with this one. So,
first of all, we'll go to comment here from Sean. Armagh, Dublin will be a blockbuster. I would edge it to Armagh because they have the king of the clutch, Rian O'Neill. Before we get into a prediction, Jason, we have to say this. Rian O'Neill, what a man to come back into the panel for Armagh, and him to come back in against Derry and to score a point on his 2025 debut. Stuff made of dreams, really. Brian is commenting here. Armagh showed lapse of concentration the last game. Derry caused a lot of goal chances. There is that element too, no doubt about it. But from Rian O'Neill's standpoint, Jason, what a guy could come back into the panel, all-Ireland winning panel, of course.
Yeah, and glad for him as well. I know he's been through tough times recently as well, and it is nice to see him back in. And if you want a big game player, there's not really many bigger at the moment, and particularly like a name as well that you want, just inspire confidence in a team. I don't know. I'm still in my head trying to figure out how to call it because attacking wise they're both brilliant to watch, and defensively they could both be really solid, or they could just go all out. I'd say that the roar, and I heard the roar all right when he was back, and it was pretty amazing to be fair. I still don't know. I forgot what the second part we were talking about was because we were talking about O'Neill, but yeah, he's certainly it's great to have him back, and Armagh can certainly do with him. Oh, I know about Donaghy and McGeaney and Farrell and them, like issues that they might have had against Galway, and particularly McGeaney and Donaghy and them had issues against Derry with the goal chance and shoring it up. Like that's what they do. That's why they are the top managers, the top coaches, because lads will listen to them, and lads will work hard to fix the errors because they know that it's not like they're going into like a game like Clare, say, where they're bet, that's it, really good luck. They're fighting for bigger things and they need to fix the errors now. So I think Armagh just, I don't know why. Rafferty and McCabe, and O'Neill been back. I don't know. It's shouting at me to go for Armagh. But the winner, of course, is in such a good spot as well. Like it's the dream victory, really. I'm gonna go with Armagh slightly.
I'm gonna sit in the fence for this one. I'm gonna go for a draw.
I think you predicted a draw. You were right. I can't remember what game it was, but I remember you predicted a draw, and I went not a chance, and it was a bloody draw. So.
I can't remember that game actually. Jesus, I don't know what it was, but this game, like both sides are performing well. This might be a feel of a championship game as well, and with this as well, with the mathematics, we'll go on to the next game as well with Derry and Galway. But a draw, regardless of the Derry and Galway result, the loser of Derry and Galway will be out of the championship if this is a draw.
Yeah. That is bad, actually, yeah. Well, they called it the group of death from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think Dublin's result over Galway at the Louth point, I think, was a little bit of a shock to the system of a lot of GA people who had many top pundits as well that kind of said, all right, Dublin, write them off for this year, they'll be back next year. And then Galway were, challenging for top, of which they obviously still are, but they were expected to get over the line against Dublin. And then Armagh and Derry were a bit of an unknown quantity. So it really has shaped up even after the first round of games to be a bit of a group of death, and the fact that one of them has to leave it's mental, but it's part of the excitement, I suppose, really as well. I see Brian saying Dublin won the last championship meet in 2010. All right,
2010, yeah.
Last time, wow. seems like they should have met before that, or since then, I should say.
Yeah. Round 3 qualifier, remember that, alright? Stephen McDonald was still playing.
Jeez, okay. Come back fair bit then, yeah. So you're going for a draw then?
I'm going to go for a draw. Sitting on the fence for this one. Will be a very interesting game, no doubt about it. But judging by our predictions there, this game is actually huge. It's on GA Plus, Derry against Galway in Celtic Park in Derry on Sunday at 2 p.m. The loser of this, it's all but gone for the championship. Like, when you think about it, like, Galway could be gone. But then again, as Sean mentioned about Derry, and he made some very good points about Derry, I will mention them now as we get on to the Derry and Galway discussion. He mentioned some very good comments in here. Oh yeah, he did. I think Derry are long overdue a win. Yes, they look in disarray with the appointment of Paddy Taddy, but they perform well in the majority of their games, but just coming up short. Surely a team with players that they do have, they've got to. They can't go whole season winless. Just on that point first, something has to hit Derry. Will it be this weekend?
I suppose it kind of feels like I could be talking about Westmeath here at home as well. You know, that falling short. Like, it took us 9 games, you know, to get our first victory under Dermot McCabe. So, and we fell short, you know, down in Cork, fell short against, you know, everybody. And yeah, they have, like, on paper, they have so many strong players and such a strong kind of unit overall that. But there's nothing to say you can't go a season without a win. Doesn't matter how big of a team you are. They're kind of stuck in that sort of area where they're not quite at the top table, but they're obviously not at the bottom. They're kind of stuck in limbo a little bit where nobody really knows what to make of them. And I don't know, though, if Galway are going to give up an All-Ireland final last year so quickly. And I see Brian's comment there, yeah, about Shane Walsh and Paul Conroy being so poor. I thought Shane Walsh was pretty abject by his standards the last day as well. But a bit like McGeaney and Desi Farrell and these great managers, poor Joyce is not going to sit back and allow those kind of things to happen very frequently. So, is it Derry's time? No, I don't think so. I still think there's enough experience in that Galway team to bring through from last year to know how to fight their way when it's maybe up against it. Like, the headlines would obviously have, you know, if it was down to the two of them, they'd say, oh, Galway might be out of the championship. You know, Derry go out and be like, hey, it's Derry, it's grand. You know, it's not the All-Ireland finalists of last year who were out. It's like Clare and the hurling. So I don't think it's quite there yet for Derry, despite the positives from the last day against Armagh. I still think Galway are too strong.
Interesting comment in here, Brian, saying, did Galway believe their own hype? Gavin commenting in here, the only result Derry got this year was at home to Galway, a draw that was. Could that be a sign? To see, obviously, Brian commenting here, Derry did finish strong against Armagh. They came in the last day in the bit of the unknown, given that we haven't seen them since the Donegal game. Given all those comments and all those signs, I know Galway look to have been absolutely in flying form up until the Dublin game, obviously. But all these signs here, is it a sign that they're about to crumble?
I don't think so. Like, I you know, obviously, like anything, like the last time I come on, or one of the last times I come on with you and made predictions, and some of them literally blew up in my face. But there wasn't enough in the Dublin game, and there hasn't been enough recently to suggest to me that Galway are in a decline or in a state of, you know, disarray or anything. Blips maybe, but enough there to turn it back around. And Derry will obviously need McGuigan and Cassidy and the likes to step up big time. I think if Galway are going to lose, McGuigan has to have near double digits on the board for scoring. Yeah, so as I say, they're really bad first half. Yeah, Galway just, it's hard to know if they're just trying to come under the radar a little bit, or if they're just not at the tempo yet, and I think it's maybe more about they're not been there yet, and they're lads who haven't turned up fully yet. But I still think they're going to have to be at 100% and stop everything that Galway throw at them and score plenty themselves the other end, because I think it'll be a high scoring game. But I'm still sticking with Galway.
I'm sticking with Galway for now. But, geez, the signs there, I feel like Derry have to come in with a performance, because if they don't, they're risking knocked out of the championship. Sean's saying here just to end the discussion on that game, I'm unsure about Galway. Shane Walsh is hot and cold, and there are other big players that didn't turn up against Dublin. Brian is in here. Last day they did have their purple patch, however overall they were very disappointing. Yeah, and Galway will definitely have to improve from that game against Dublin. But we are predicting Galway win up at Celtic Park. We'll have to see what happens. One more comment here before we get on to the Tailteann Cup. The pressure will be on both, says Brian. Moving on to the Tailteann Cup, and we'll go group by group in this one, because there are situations in which there could be knockout games going on. So starting off in Group 1, there are 2 games on Sunday in this, and both the first game between Leitrim and Tipperary is on at 1:45 in Cusack Park, Monaghan in County Westmeath. Obviously, that's on at 1:45, and that's on Sunday. And then the other game in Group 1 is Kildare against Sligo. That's on in Dr. Hyde Park in Roscommon at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So the table looks like this. Kildare and Sligo are both on 4 points. Tipperary and Leitrim are on 0 at this present moment in time. The winner of Kildare and Sligo will progress to the Tailteann Cup quarterfinals. Kildare only need a draw to progress to the quarterfinals. And as for the other game, worth noting as well, because of New York's inclusion in the preliminary quarterfinals, third place might not be enough to make it into the preliminary quarterfinals given the scoring difference. So the scoring difference for Leitrim at the moment is -29. Tipperary's is -19. We'll move on to Group 3 in a bit as well, with your group, obviously, Jason, with Westmeath, Limerick, Antrim and London are in that group, but both of them have -20 odd scoring difference. So it might be enough for one of these sides to win. We'll never know. But what are you predicting out of these 2 games, Kildare, Sligo and Tipperary, Leitrim?
Leitrim's obviously is terrible after the maul and they got against Kildare. I think the first day out, 30-something points Kildare kicked that day. It was a bit of a field day. At least Leitrim fielded a team, I suppose. Isn't that always a positive? So, Kildare, Sligo will be an interesting one. Kildare are, in my eyes, the favourites for the Tailteann Cup. They're just when they're on form, and we have Westmeath. We have a terrible thing. I don't know what it is. There's nearly a bit of a mental break comes when we end up facing them, as happened in Newbridge, of course, a few weeks back. So I expect Kildare to beat Sligo. I would expect Tipperary probably to beat Leitrim. I don't really think either of them will, be great shakes in that one. One of them might, as you said, get out on a scoring difference. But no, Tip and Leitrim aren't going far, and Kildare and Sligo, Kildare are going far. Sligo might follow them far enough as well, possibly.
Yeah, exactly. I'll probably go for Kildare and Tipperary to win those games as well. On to Group 2, and both of these games are at 6 p.m. on Saturday evening. So Offaly against Laois. This game is on in St. Conleth's Park in Newbridge, and the other game is between Wicklow and Waterford, and that game is on in Chadwick's Wexford Park. So the situation in this group is Offaly are at 4 points, sitting high and pretty at the top of the table. They beat Wicklow and they beat Waterford, so Laois could still overtake them in that table. Laois and Wicklow brought on 2 points, and then Waterford on 0. Given the score difference of Antrim, London, Leitrim and Tipperary, I don't think Laois are in any danger of going out of the championships, even if they lose to Offaly. But Wicklow could finish second if they beat Waterford, like they're expected to do, I'm sure. But what are you expecting out of these 2 games?
Expecting Waterford anyway to finish bottom. That would kind of be given, I would say, at this stage. And then Offaly and Laois, 2 teams who are a little bit kind of stuck at the moment, I think, football-wise, and 2 teams who really getting far in this competition would do them no harm. You look at Offaly, underage football has had so much success, but yet in parts this year, one of the grades, they were pretty wildly poor. Even I remember down in O'Connor Park against Westmeath, and they looked like a team lost at sea. I think it's a minor level. I would expect Offaly to have enough to come through. Laois, who are in a little bit of transition, I think, themselves. And then Wicklow should comfortably beat Waterford, which make things. You could end up possibly with 3 teams on 4, then couldn't you? And come down to score difference.
If Laois beat Offaly,
yeah. So I still think there's a Laois performance there, but I still think it's an Offaly win, and then an easy one for Wicklow, I think, over Waterford.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with those 2 predictions as well. Moving on to Group 3, and it's Westmeath group, obviously. So Westmeath are playing Limerick on Saturday at 2 p.m. That's in O'Moore Park in Portlaoise. Both Limerick and Westmeath are on 4 points, so that's the top of the table last year. Westmeath, a draw will be enough for them to get to the Tailteann Cup quarter-finals. London are playing Antrim in the other game. That's on in Park Esler and Newry. That's on Sunday at 1:45 p.m. So London are on -20 scoring difference. Antrim are -24. So the winners might not even progress to the next round. We'll have to see how it all plays out and all that. But Westmeath and Limerick, you would expect Westmeath to win, but Limerick, I've seen them in parts against Cork, obviously, in the Gaelic grounds at Munster. I was really impressed with them up until they got a red card that night. So it will be a tough game. I know Westmeath, Luke Loughlin's in absolutely incredible form at this present moment of time. Westmeath are one of the favourites to win it. But Limerick will be no easy meet.
Yeah, they're kind of a team who you'd nearly, because you associate them so much with the success of hurling, that you kind of go into football matches and maybe kind of expecting very little from them, and maybe they live off that, the fact you don't know one thinks much of them. But yeah, we would like to get the job done though. No sluggish start like we had in the opening 2 games. Try and set things up fairly quickly if possible. We've had a couple of fantastic one particular find I think we've unearthed this year, Sam Smith at fullback from Kilkenny here, just so solid. Obviously after losing Kevin Maguire to retirement, and then Charlie Drum is travelling I think at the moment, to have someone really young but so calm, composed, and just brilliant to watch at fullback for us. And it's a real positive for us to have, because the new rules, while they're fantastic for us in attacking, God, like down in Cork that night, we were, the amount of gaps we had, and like we have so many good defenders, like Jamie Ganud, one of the best touch tight markers in the game, but Cork just found so much space, and that was a pattern through the league for us as well. Dermot McCabe, in fairness to him, has put a lot of work in, you can see it, and it's kind of starting to pay off. And Sam Smith in fullback is just really, really helpful. Having Ronan Wallace at 6, probably the one player on earth who wears 6, and I don't think ever plays 6, because he's just powerhouse through the middle. And my kind of most enjoyable Westmeath player to watch around outside, obviously from Luke Loughlin, has been Matthew Whitaker, and I'm really delighted for him that he's cemented his place. We joking with him after the game in London, someone that was chatting said to him, said, "Oh, you're a mainstay now in the team," and I said, "You can't say that to him now. Keep him on his toes, keep him trying." So he was laughing at that, but he's a fine footballer. The only, and it's not a negative, but the only thing that isn't working really is the goalkeeper setup. And I know Conor McCormack, brilliant forward for Calry, his club here, he's not a goalkeeper. And while it might have been fine during the trial of the rules, it's not really as solid an area as I would like. There are plenty of really good goalkeepers in Westmeath, and it's one thing I would like to fix, but I would expect us to win, and win comfortably. I would down in Portlaoise for that one. It should be a steady victory, I would say.
Yeah, I'd probably go for Westmeath to win that game, and probably Antrim to beat London as well. It will be a difficult game, obviously, for both sides, but both sides might be out of the championship regardless of that result. And Group 4 is the final group, but this is a very, very tight group. Wexford are on 3 points, Carlow are on 3 points as well, Fermanagh on 2, and Longford are on 0. Obviously, Longford, by my calculations, are actually out of the Tailteann Cup because they can't overtake Fermanagh because of head-to-head. So Longford are playing Carlow in Tullamore, again, let's go Connor Park, Tullamore, at 1:40. Both games are on 1:45 p.m. on Sunday, but Carlow are playing a Longford team that is out of the Tailteann Cup and have nothing to play for, so you'd imagine Carlow win that game. The other game is live on GA Plus, that's between Fermanagh and Wexford. That's the curtain raiser to the Armagh Dublin game in Croke Park. That's on 1:45 on Sunday. So Like, Fermanagh could still finish in the top 2 despite the defeat to Carlow early on the campaign. But Wexford will be a tough game, obviously. They had a bit of a dour spell, obviously, after they lost to Limerick and then lost in Leinster to Laois as well. But they're slowly but surely getting a bit of form going together. I think the story that had to go up to Jason has to be Carlow. Considering the manager kind of situation after the league with Shane K. Kerr leaving his post as Carlow manager, then Joe Murphy comes in. Obviously a decent manager for Naas, but he's kind of bonded this Carlow team together, and they're starting to get results, and you imagine they'll get another one this weekend.
Yeah, Shane Kern leaving probably not the worst thing on earth to happen to Carlow, to be honest. But yeah, they're a great story, to be fair. Starting with Longford on the bottom, who I think Longford Statsman had up that it's their longest run of defeats. I think 10 defeats on the bounce in senior football, which is atrocious, by a county which has born plenty of good footballers over the years and has still got plenty. Joked with my cousin that because he left and went to Australia there a couple of months ago, that's why they've fallen, but there's a lot more reasons than that, unfortunately. Fermanagh and Wexford I'm actually kind of glad this is on telly, because it's got a real feel of, plenty to play for on it. I would expect Carlow to stroll past Longford. They're out. Pride, I don't know, do lads still play for Pride these days when they're out of a competition? But Fermanagh and Wexford certainly will be a game to look forward to. Fermanagh have, I think, maybe slightly underachieved, considering that at the start they were being touted as one to look out for alongside Kildare, Westmeath, that kind of thing, as a team to maybe could cause surprise. Like, they come through, they take on Ulster teams every year who are notoriously the most physical, competitive, whatever you want to call them, and they haven't quite sparked as of yet. So I think that could be another great game, be a great one to watch as well. Wexford, though, they're a team who have transitioned enough that you look at them, you just kind of wonder, is there a bit more in them than maybe people are letting on? And I think a Wexford win and a Carlow win, I think, will cement them as the top 2. I think that's how it'll pan out.
Yeah, I think so. I think Fermanagh might nick the game against Wexford. They have a lot of potential in that team, and I think Carlow will win that game, which means actually Carlow will progress to the quarterfinals, and they're one game away from Croke Park, which is absolutely remarkable when you think about it. Joe Murphy's done a very, very good job there at Carlow. So yeah, that's the Halton Cup wrapped up. There's one more football game we'll look into. There's a comment in here before we get into the under-20 football final. They would that's on Louth. They put a broad support, nothing against Fermanagh and Wexford. It's very good that these counties are in Croke Park. Absolutely, Brian. Looking at the under-20 football final that was on last night, and unfortunately for Louth, their brilliant run has come to an end. They would have broke 10 really, 5-16 to Tyrone to 17 points to Louth. But you have to give a lot of credit to Tyrone. And in this game, Louth had a goal chance, I think, on 41 minutes of this game. Dar Dorian hit the bar, and that would have levelled proceedings. But then Owen McElholm scores a quick 1-1 for Tyrone, and ultimately the game is over then. And McElholm scored 2-4. Obviously, I'll bring up the scores there down. Performance by the brilliant performance from a Tyrone point of view. Looking at Tyrone's win there, I'm looking at the stats there for the Tyrone and Louth game last night. Noah Grimes, that's the one who got 2-6. Bang on the money, that's the guy. So that's the stats for the Tyrone and Louth last night. So you could see there, Tyrone 70% shot accuracy. They were absolutely superb in front of the post. Louth 48%, just not on it, unfortunately, from their point of view. And you look at even the kickouts, but it was very, very even in the middle of the park. Louth really got a hold on the kickouts in the first half, but Tyrone steadied the ship in the second half to win the game. In every other aspect, other than shooting accuracy, it was level for much of the game, but Tyrone just were absolutely exceptional in this game, and they were absolutely superb. Noah Grimes, as Jason mentioned, with 2-6, Owen McElholm 2-4, Shane McDermott off the bench with 1-1 as well. James Maguire really impressed the midfield with Louth with a total of 4 points as well. But I wanted to show the viewers this as well in terms of the top scorers. Roy McCullough with 1 goal and 46 points was top of the list there for Tyrone. But you look at the top scorers from play, Mackleham again, 6 goals, 21 points in the under-20 championship, with Noah Grimes following closely with 4 goals and 17 points. And what is funny about those scoring stats as well is Rory McCullough and Mackleham are from the same club, Loch McCrory. So they have some future, I have to say. But Tyrone football, 3 All-Irelands in under-20 level in the last 4 years, Jason. Tyrone must be doing something right. That was an incredible performance last night.
Yeah, and someone was saying to me it's twice they've done back-to-back as well, which that's pretty impressive. Split Tyrone under-20s into 2, yeah, telling you. Noah Grimes, I just remember the name because I think he was player of the match as well with the 2-6. They're just very, very strong. I know that final quarter was when they kind of blitzed Louth. They hit 3 something to very little from Louth. And at the same time, though, it could have been a totally different, last quarter. Had any of those 3 or 4 Louth chances hit the back of the net, it could have been a totally different game. But yeah, there's something brewing in Tyrone clearly. But as I said, Omagh, one of the best we've ever seen. Yeah, he is, and his name really came to me actually when I was on chatting with you here before, because I wouldn't say I overlooked him, but I didn't pass a whole lot of heed to him. But since then, it's just been like his name just pops up all the time. So yeah, maybe another Cavan or Clifford type player who is just going to take the GA world by storm, and probably maybe already is taking it a little bit. Credit to Louth. I know they were in year whatever it is of a 15 or 25 year plan, and it's really paying off for them this year, like to 3 provincial finals in the same year at 3 different grades, and to win 2 of them and not be far off win the 3rd. And they're really doing things right in kind of behind the scenes. Obviously getting in like someone like Ger Brennan who played on such a successful team and all that, but at underage they're obviously doing things right. The plan is obviously working really well, but by God, it's working well in Tyrone as well. And for the rest of us, it's nearly a case at this stage of we're trying to play a bit of catch up with them, because they look phenomenal. And I know they said it about the Roscommon team years ago at underage, that God, I can't wait till they go on and challenge for the All-Ireland. It never happened. It just seems that there's a bit more in this Tyrone team, a bit more substance, and I think, yeah, could be an interesting one now in the next couple of years, watching them at senior level.
And we'll probably see Owen Mackleham in action for the Tyrone seniors against Mayo on Saturday as well. He's an absolutely exceptional footballer. He really, really is. At schools level with Oma CBS, he's club Loch McCrory, and just for Tyrone, he's been absolutely superb over the last few seasons. Sean is saying here, you got the sense that.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think. I was trying to explain it. They're so brilliant to watch in that you never know what's coming next, and that's just such a good thing about a team that wants to attack as well. Yeah, Sean's got it on the money there,
as he usually is, to be fair.
Yeah.
And Gavin is saying here, I really liked the quarterfinals in minor. Do you think it could be brought into under-20s? I'm not sure. It's just a tradition really in under-20s that the provincial winners progress, and it might take an edge off the provincial finals in a way in under-20s. I don't know what you think about that, Jason.
Yeah, it is maybe a bit more old school, going back to the pre-backdoor days of having just kind of the winners there. But I like it. Yeah, I think you're right that it would detract a little bit from the provincial finals. I think it's just nice. Yep, you've done it now. The others are out, and let's just battle it out now and see who the champion of champions is. And I kind of like that. I'd be in favour of keeping it. I'm not fussed about having an extra game. And I'd say some teams to lose provincial finals probably don't want it either. They're probably just had enough, I'd say, at that stage, and some of them will be looking for a senior and all that after. So yeah, I don't know, maybe leave it as it is. I kind of like it the way it is, but
yeah, exactly. So, but congratulations to Tyrone being under-20 champions. Commiserate commiserations to Louth. What a season they had nonetheless. So Tyrone are the under-20 football champions. The under-20 hurling champions will crowd this weekend as well, as Kilkenny battle with Tipperary in UPMC Nolan Park on Saturday at 3 p.m. live on TG Cahir. And before we get into the game, obviously I do have stats on the game between Kilkenny and Tipperary, starting off with Kilkenny's journey to the final. So they had 4 games in Leinster. They beat Wexford on a scoreline of 113 to 1-6. They then beat Dublin in the group stage 320 to 216. They beat Laois in the Leinster semi-final by 26 points to 1-9. A Laois team that beat Wexford as well, so that was an impressive win for Kilkenny. And then beat Dublin in the Leinster final 221 to 17 points. They've averaged a score 219 per game and conceded an average of 112. Look at their scores as well. Top of the list there is Michael Brennan with 1 goal and 18 points. You have Armagh up there with 114, Ed McDermott with 19, Rory Glynn with 16, and then the list goes on with Owen Lynn with 7 points, Marty Murphy and Ed Louth with 6 points each. Looking at Tipperary, their journey to the final, that's their scores. Looking at the journey to the final first, they actually lost to Limerick on the first day out, shockingly so, 213 to 17 points, but they recovered well in the second game against Cork, winning that game 120 to 211. They beat Clare 321 to 21 points, and then beat Waterford 124 to 214. They beat Clare comprehensively enough in the Munster final as well by 319 to 120. They've averaged a score of 219 per game and conceded an average of 117. Their top scorers, you might recognise a lot of these players on the list. That's because most of them are actually senior. Darren McCarthy, for one, being one of Tipperary's top scorers in senior level. He is the top scorer at the 20 level for Tip, with 1 goal and 35 points. Oisin O'Donoghue was 115 as well. Paddy McDermott with 3 goals, or Paddy McCormick, should I say, with 3-9. Conor Martin with 2-7. Adam Daly with 10 points. Carl English 1-7. And you can see Sam O'Farrell down the list as well, the wing back for the Tipperary seniors as well. So Tipperary and Kilkenny have played a lot against each other, Jason, at underage competitions. They produced an absolute classic at minor level last year, if you remember that correctly. So should be a belter of a game, this game at 3 p.m. on Saturday.
Should be, yeah. And yeah, it's funny when you put up that list of Tip players, it was kind of going, yep, no him. It's just like, they obviously get them going fairly young anyway in Tipperary, but it's probably the concession maybe for Tip that's the thing to look at. But then in saying that, Kilkenny, Leinster isn't as on par, teams aren't as on par as they are kind of in Munster, where it could be anyone any year really in many ways, whereas in Leinster there's kind of a, the standouts. Like we were chatting about the football earlier about Dublin and Galway, like you have Tip losing the first game, and we were saying, is that, Galway now, where they've fallen apart or whatever, Tip have won every game since. So errors were fixed and things were done to, steady the ship and get things going again, and they've scored more, in games since then. Kilkenny are, from what I've seen of them, they do rely quite heavily on Brennan from the place ball. There's a little bit of a TJ Reid kind of thing with it, or from Westmeath, Killian Doyle. It's like you get 50 scores in a game, but 49 of them are frees, and it's kind of frustrating that way. But it should be a titanic kind of game. Player I've kind of most enjoyed, I can only confess to have seen him maybe 2 or 3 times, was Dara Verica around the middle. Definitely, and I think he already, could be wrong now in this, but I'm fairly sure he played at some stage for Kilkenny seniors earlier in the year and got a score, I think, around the time when McKessie was kind of coming into Kilkenny as well. Cracking game. A draw. Is there extra time in this final? I assume there's extra time, is there? Extra
time, and I don't know, is it going for replay or does it go to penalties? But
I go a draw. Yeah, I call a draw, and whoever wins in extra time, well done.
I'll probably go for Tip to win this game, but Brian is saying here Tip could be in for quite a lot of success in hurling, both at underage and senior level. Yeah, like if Tipperary win this under-20 title, that'll be 2 underage titles All-Ireland in a row, and they've reached the under-20 All-Ireland final last year, losing narrowly to Offaly, obviously. And they won the minor All-Ireland last year, and their seniors are in the All-Ireland series still after finishing third. So I think Tipperary could win this game and carry on that trajectory at the moment, but Tipperary hurling's on a really high ebb at this present moment of time.
Yeah, and kind of all the talk in general, kind of in Championship, has sort of evaded them a little bit. It was of all the Munster teams, they're probably the one that I've actually heard the least kind of about. It's all been about Clare, capitulate and all this, and yeah, there is a I suppose a steadiness to them that obviously is shown at underage success. Is a great marker for the future as well. Not always, of course, but it seems to be all right considering that so many of them are already senior lads. And probably part of the reason, and Brian's saying they're on an upward trend, part of the reason probably is the fact that these lads are senior, but also bringing that senior Munster experience back to a younger age grade. And that can only benefit you as long as you stay fit and you aren't burned out. But yeah, there's maybe a bright future ahead for Tip. I hope my mate isn't listening to this because his head will explode now as a Tip man. But bright future for Tip, I would say, judging by the standards at underage they're setting at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And Tip look like big favourites for this final. Look at the games and look at the scores and everything like that. And considering the senior players in the Tipperary panel as well, you would have to say Tip are massive favourites for this one. But Jason is going for a draw, whatever happens there, extra time, whatever happens. I'm saying Tip win after normal time, but we'll have to see what happens. Look at the lower tier hurling competitions now, and the Christie Ring final first of all. This is the last weekend of the lower tier competitions. All three finals are on at Croke Park. So starting off with Derry against London. This game is on at 5 p.m. in Croke Park in GAHQ on TG4 YouTube as well. And I'll bring up the scores and stats for both Derry and London. We'll start off with Derry and their journey to the final, followed by their scores. So looking at their journey to the final, they beat Donegal on a scoreline of 121 to 117, beat London, Saturday's opponents, on a scoreline of 219 to 118, fell to Meath. They lost to Meath in the third game 318 to 122, but then hammered Tyrone 130 to 11 points, and then beat a Wicklow team that were unbeaten going into that game quite comprehensively, 230 to 113. They've scored an average of 126 per game and conceded an average of 116, so they really beat down teams when they're in the mood, Derry. Look at their scores there. Cormac O'Doherty at the top there with 3 goals and 36 points. Brilliant player for Slot-Neil in the club championship as well. Christy McNaughton there with 117. Eamon Conway with 12 points. John Mullen with 11 points. Shay Cassidy with 1-8. And you could see down the list as well, including the likes of Rory O'Meanon and Micheál McGrath, who were in the Slot-Neil team that were in the All-Ireland semi-final last December as well. Look at London's journey to the final, and it's brilliant having London in this final to just grow the product of hurling across the whole globe. Look at their run to the final. They beat Meath the first day of 518 to 21 points. They lost to Derry the second day, obviously 219 to 118, but they drew against Wicklow to get a bit of momentum going, 217 each. They beat Donegal then 219 to 115, and then hammered Tyrone to get to this final 420 to 113. They scored an average of 319 per game and conceded an average of 118 per game. Look at their scores there. David Devine has a total of 1 goal and 27 points. Jack Morrissey has 4 goals and 11 points. Sean Glynn has 215. Conor O'Carroll has 4-6. Dylan Dawson with 110. Paul Kennedy with 2-4. You can see down the list from a London point of view there as well. Quite an interesting pairing here, Jace. The winner goes up to the Joe McDonagh Cup. London were Division 3 finalists, actually. They lost to Mayo, who are the Nicky Rackard final this weekend. So quite interesting that they lost that final, but they were very good in the league up until that point. Derry, club level and inter-county level, you were kind of waiting for that spark to come. Will it come this weekend? We're not sure. But what are you predicting out of this game?
Yeah, over in London the other week, after the game, a lot of stewards and stuff from London, obviously a lot of them will be Irish born kind of lads or Irish family, and we're big talk about the hurling and stuff in London, how it's going so well. You see, this is what you can achieve when you put a Westmeath man in the forward line for a different team. David Devine obviously lives out the road here, so or originally his family are from out the road here, and Castle Pollard. All the Devines are fine hurlers, and he's been pretty much on song alongside Morrissey as well. If London were maybe to take something, I know they lost to Derry in the group, maybe take a result from that group would be the fact that Derry lost to Meath Now, I would rank Meath really, really low down at the moment in the past, maybe 6, 8 months in hurling. I just thought they've been, when they came to Cusack Park and Westmeath were already not great, they were absolutely atrocious and they made Westmeath look fantastic. And I know Mickey Burke has now left after 200 plus games or whatever for Meath, and it's kind of a stalwart, I know, ending his career. But Meath hurling isn't in the greatest of places, and of course we're the ones in Westmeath who are having to take the management who were not wanted in Meath into Westmeath. So I think London should look at this as a massive opportunity to put London hurling properly on the map, like in something, you know, that will gain them a bit of recognition. And for all the work that they're putting in over there, and I know a lot of the work they do put in, it will be fantastic for them. Now, in saying that, the gang up in Derry, I know a few of them up there are really, really hard working, and hurling is at county level, I should say, is just not quite there with the club county kind of crossover. But for them, this is the opportunity to maybe start again putting things on the board for them. I love a London win. I don't know what it is about them, or what. Maybe it's because I'm international GA man at heart, maybe, but they're a great county setup over in London, and I will them to win this one, and just it'll do so much, I think, for the game of hurling as well over there, and which is strong, but it could be stronger. But a London win by 2 or 3 maybe. That's what I'm going to go for, yeah.
That's an interesting prediction. Like at the start of the year, I predicted London to win the Christy Ring Cup, and I have been impressed with London, but this is a big but. Now, Derry at club level with Schlottneil, they massively impressed me, obviously, in that All-Ireland semi-final when they played Stars, with the players that they had. Even Shane McGuigan was playing that day, and Brendan Rodgers. But even without those players, O'Meanon's an excellent hurler. So was obviously Cormac O'Doherty. What a player to have in terms of frees. Micheál McGrath around the middle of the park is absolutely very good as well. I just think I'd love London to win it. Obviously, Paul Kennedy's a Corkman in that scoring list. He's from Blackrock and Cork. I'd love London to win this game, and it will do great to grow the game abroad, obviously. I just feel Derry will make it. They've been in absolutely brilliant form at this present moment in time. The players that they have from Schlottneil as well, they seem to be buying in. Like the likes of Rory O'Meanon could easily pick football, but they've chosen hurling. Not like Shane McGuigan and Brendan Rodgers, they've chosen football, but obviously can't win everybody. But Derry have been having potential over the last few years, and I think this year, and with the added carrot as well, that in the Joe McDonagh Cup you'd have Down and Antrim in it next year. If Derry were to go up, you'd have 3 passionate hurling counties up in Ulster battling it out in the Joe McDonagh Cup. That would be something to behold in a way. I just feel like Derry might do it. They might nick it, but we'll have to see at the weekend. It should be a very interesting game. We talked about between Derry and London. It should be a very interesting game there. It's Connacht Derby in the Nicky Rackard final between Mayo and Roscommon, 2 traditional football counties, obviously, but hurling takes centre stage for these sets of players. This is at 1 p.m. in Croke Park on Saturday, live on the TG4 YouTube channel. So look at Mayo's journey to the final, if we can find it here. So look at Mayo's journey to the final. So they beat Roscommon actually the first day out by 121 to 114. Might be a sign of things to come on Saturday. They beat Armagh quite comprehensively, 129 to 11 points. Then beat Louth 225 to 218. Beat Sligo, another Connacht side, 132 to 117. And then they were already in the final by the time they played Fermanagh. For the record, they drew that game 316 to 122. They've averaged a score 224 per game and conceded an average of 116. Look at their scores here, and you look at the top there, Shane Bolden with 28 points for Mayo, Cormac Phillips with 118, Owen Delaney with 215, Liam Lavin with 15 points, Ryan Duffy with 8 points, Danny Huan with 7 points, Simon Thomas with 2-1, and you can see down the list there, there's a lot of good scores, including the goalkeeper, Bobby Douglas, who has been a good scorer for Mayo over the last few years, under place balls in particular. Look at Roscommon and look at their journey to the final. They look at their journey. They lost to Mayo the first day out by 114 to 121. They drew with Sligo, and things were looking a bit ropey after round 2. They drew against Sligo 114 to 17 points. They got back on track with a win over Armagh 115 to 115 points. Then hammered Fermanagh on the second last day out 427 to 22 points, and then beat Louth on the last day by 417 to 20 points. A game where Sean Canning scored a hat-trick in an incredible performance by him. They scored an average of 218 per game and conceded an average of 20 points per game. Maybe something Mayo might look into, like the goals that Roscommon are getting, kind of keeping them in games, whereas the opposition seem to score more points than them in games. Look at the scores from a Roscommon point of view. Robbie Fallon up the top there with 212. Also up the top is Sean Canning, as I mentioned before, a hat-trick against Louth. 5 goals and 3 points from play overall for Sean Canning. Brendan Mullery with 111. Finn Killian with 1-9 as well. Conor Cosgrove with 11 points. Conor Mullery with 9 points. Cian Murray with 7 points. Ben McGahan with 1-4. And you can see down the list from a Roscommon point of view there. Mayo won Division 3 in the Alliance League, Jason. They've been on very good form this year, no doubt about it. They beat London in that final, who were in the Christie Ring final this weekend. That would make them big favourites. But can their Connacht rivals, Roscommon, A, turn them over after Mayo beat them on the first day out in the Nicky Rackard, and B, can they provide a big shock in this final?
I think the only way that it's not a Mayo win is if Mayo get too cocky and sort of start celebrating before the ball's even thrown in. Mayo, to me, I was looking at your stats there. Like, Mayo's average victory is plus 11, Roscommon's is plus 4. So that, to me, in itself says that Mayo have to make up at least 7 points without Mayo tagging on any extra, and I don't think there is enough depth in Roscommon hurling in general, let alone from the likes of Conor Cosgrove and the lads at Roscommon to do that on the day. And the fact that it's in Croke Park and there's a whole lot to it, whereas Mayo have Keith Higgins, wasn't it, who captained the hurlers. I think the Mayo hurlers, or was in around there anyway.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so like there's plenty that Mayo have in the back pocket to kind of pick out and use, whereas Roscommon, I think the underdog tag is probably vindicated in this one. I can't see anything except a strong Mayo performance and victory. They'll want to progress hurling the way it's going, and it'll be ideal for them to step up another level again. So I'm solid Mayo victory.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Mayo to win this game as well. They've been comprehensive the whole season, and I think they'll cap off a brilliant campaign with the win in the Nicky Rackard. Looking at the Laurie Marr final, and you talked about Jace there with London, you love overseas. GA, another overseas team is in the final weekend on Saturday. It is New York. They're coming up against Cavan in the Laurie Marr final on Saturday at 3 p.m. on the TGCAR YouTube channel. So look at Cavan's journey to the final, start things off. And they played 5 games, obviously. New York only played 1. We'll get onto that in just a sec. But Cavan beat Warwickshire in the first day out 432 to 111. That's some score there from the boys from Cavan. They beat their rivals Monaghan 220 to 114 on match day 2. They beat Lancashire 324 to 214. Beat Longford 329 to 317, and by then they had sealed their place in the Laurie Marr final. So the game against Leitrim was really a non-event, a game which they actually lost 215 to 110 when they played sort of the second team in that game. They scored an average of 322 per game, so a lot of goals they scored, Cavan, and conceded an average of 214. Look at their scores there. Liam O'Brien up the top, and we talk about New York having players from Galway, players from Cork and things like that. Liam O'Brien, their top scorer, Cavan's top scorer, is actually Waterford man. Yeah. Just a fact for you, with 44 points. Sean Keelan with 5 goals and 17 points. Nicky Kenny with 3 goals and 11. Eamon McAllister with 3-7. Jack McGuinness with 10 points. Jack Barry 1-1-2. You can see down the list in terms of Cavan scores there. So a lot to look at in fairness from a Cavan point of view. Obviously with New York, the anomaly, they've only played 1 game, and that was the semi-final in the Laurie Marr. They beat Monaghan last weekend in a brilliant performance, to be fair, from the New York team. They beat them 129 to 213, and by default, obviously, they've scored an average of 129, conceded an average of 213, the easiest mathematics I'd ever have to do. Look at the scores, and just to spice it up a bit, obviously these are their scores against Monaghan. I put in actually their clubs and their counties on this graphic as well. So David Mangan from Conneran from Galway with 11 points. AJ Willis from Portroe and Tipperary with 1 goal and 8 points from play, so very impressive scoring from AJ there. Adam Loughlin-Stones from Clonkill and County Westmeath, Jason, with 3 points on the board. Johnny Glynn from Ardrahan in Galway, obviously All-Ireland champion. Johnny Glynn with 2 points in their game against Monaghan. Darragh Moore from Castlebarter and Cork is there on the list as well. So is Tom Amar from Kildangan, George McParland from Doon in Limerick, Cian Mullane from Clarehan from Tipperary, and Aina Barry from Clooney Quinn in Clare. So obviously, Jason, we don't know much about this. I know they had a brilliant performance against Monaghan last weekend, but they've only played 1 game. It's hard to really recognise what is going to be in the water for New York, whereas Cavan performed very well in Division 3 in the Alliance League. They've won nearly every game that mattered on the run to this final. Should be a very interesting game.
Yeah, I'd be fairly fortunate to know Michael and James Stones, MJS, who are the main men behind New York. They're both Westmeath men, but they're over here in Kilbeggan. Michael, I would text Michael probably every other day, I'd say, at this stage. And then Michael is obviously father of Adam Loughlin-Stones, and obviously his brother then of Luke Loughlin as well. So there's plenty of hurling pedigree in the family as well. A good laugh with Michael before the Monaghan game, because he was listed as the man who worked the pitches, I think, in an article. Whereas he's the multi-million backer of the team. He's also does the kit man, organise. He basically does everything to do with New York football and hurling. Flies over and back to Westmeath here regularly. Sponsors all the underage, everything underage in Westmeath is sponsored by him and his brother James. So the Westmeath are very grateful for them, and it was part of the reason that they came to play Monaghan here in Mullingar. Was moved out of Parnell, of course, as well. There was a lot of, I'd say if it was 2 bigger teams, there might have been more made about the Monaghan management comments, maybe. But because of the fact it's lower tier, I suppose, in inverted commas, hurling, it wasn't too much made about it. But I can understand where Monaghan are coming from. The other side to it is that New York would give anything to play 5 matches before they get choked into a semi-final. They only play A versus B games, and it's 99% on Astro over in New York. They play against a couple of the club sides who don't have any or many players on the hurling panel. It's not as straightforward, like, it's so unfair chucking New York into a semi-final when we force ourselves to get through 5 games. You can ask New York, like, they would only love the chance to come over or have teams come over to them, but it's a logistical, financial thing more than anything else. I don't think there's any other reason for it, because New York, I'm sure, would happily come over here for them all. Mick Stones and Mick and James have plenty of cash there, I'm sure, to fly New York over if they needed to. But it's, I think it's more of a GA issue. It's nothing to do with New York. As I said, they play A versus B games on Astro. That's their preparation for an All-Ireland semi-final. Monaghan have the luxury of being able to play 5 teams that they can, commute to in some way. It's not easy to commute from JFK Airport in a 7-hour flight, so they're a bit of an anomaly, I suppose, to teams over here if you don't know them that well. But some fine hurlers, obviously Adam Loughlin-Stones, James Birmingham's the other Westmeath man on the team, David Mangan, AJ, of course, as well, who's another fine player. David Mangan from Kilkenny over there in Galway, very respected hurler from what I know over in the States and in the west of Ireland. So I'd be obviously very hopeful. Have my New York gear and stuff ready, I'm sure, for that one. And I would love if things change to give them more games over here or get more teams over there. But as I said, that's on the people in the top jobs, not on New York or Monaghan or Cavan or any of us. So until that changes, that's the way it's going to be, unfortunately.
It's going to be a difficult one to call, obviously. I think Cavan might nick it, considering they had the 5 games and New York A versus B games, obviously, as you mentioned there, and the Monaghan game. I think Cavan have been in absolutely brilliant form at this present moment in time. And it's going to be an interesting occasion, I would say. New York have some brilliant players. Obviously, Johnny Glynn playing in a Laurie Bar final will look a bit out of touch, but we'll move on from that. But look, New York, it's brilliant that they are playing in Croke Park. The hurlers getting their day out in the sun, obviously beating Monaghan with a brilliant performance last weekend. I just feel like Cavan might have the upper hand, but we'll have to see what happens in terms of that. Gavin's coming in here with a comment. If New York win this, do they play Nicky Rackard? I don't think the GA thought this out. They actually do play the Nicky Rackard, as far as I know anyway. So should be interesting to see how that all plays out. But we will discuss one more thing, and that is the Camogie Championship. So obviously Group 1 and Group 2 took place last weekend. So we'll start off in Group 1 where Cork and Clare got wins. Clare have the weekend off this weekend. So Cork are on the rag this weekend to play Tipperary on Saturday at 4 p.m. Should be a very interesting game there. With Cork having not conceded a goal since the end of June in 2024. The All-Ireland champions are pouring. It's been absolutely incredible form from a Cork point of view, no doubt about it. And look at the other game in Neville Park and Rockhill, Limerick against Wexford. Two sides that lost last weekend on Saturday at 4 p.m. This is also in Group 1. You would feel Limerick and Wexford, this is a must-win for both of them if they have any chance of thinking that they'll stay in the championship. As for Tip and Cork actually played each other in the rag in the league, and Cork didn't concede anything, not even a point from play in that game. Grace O'Brien got 1-7 from Breeze in that particular game. So Cork are in brilliant form at the moment. It's kind of a case that Cork are in brilliant form. It's just unfortunate that Tipperary are coming up against a team that is in red hot form at this present moment of time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and from the highlights, on the Sunday game as well, they were going through a list of names. It was just here in Cavan, O'Connor, and then am I right in saying is there another Finn? Is there now an Orla?
Claude Finn. Well, they're not related. They're not related now. Right, Claude Finn from Father Neils and Orla is from Kinsale. So
okay, I just thought I saw the name Finn. I went, oh God, not another one has to deal with like another moving forward. So, Limerick were annihilated. What I remember, like 6-20, whatever.
38 points.
Was it? Yeah, like so. It's not great reading for the rest of the world in Camogie, senior Camogie, when you're looking at Cork, putting such a high score up on the opening day as well. Kilkenny and Galway obviously would be, thereabouts as well. I think they're going grand already. So Limerick and Wexford, yeah, it's a big one. Like it's must win really for either of them. But at the same time, you have to feel that it's only just tagging them along for the journey a little bit further, maybe, but that at some point they're probably going to meet one of the big, powerhouse again and get another hockey in. So it's not ideal. I think Kilkenny were whatever ahead the last is, like 15 or 16 ahead. So like the gulf seems to be growing at senior level between the top and the not at the top sides, and it's probably not great for the game. But it's a bit like Dublin, the men's football. It's the way it goes, and it's your job to try and catch them. So yeah, Cork just looked fantastic the last day from what I saw. Just scores over the pitch, defensively solid. Yeah, odds on to win, I think, and be in the final again.
Yeah, I think Cork will win this game against Tipperary. Obviously, Tipperary are a good side, but Cork are in brilliant form at the moment. You know what? I'll back Limerick to recover from last weekend and beat Wexford. They're at home in Rockhill. It might be a good chance for Limerick, the younger players, to shine in this particular game when they're able to do so. Wexford did lose to Clare last weekend as well, so they're also coming in off the back of the loss. In Group 2, Dublin have an off week this weekend after their loss to Galway. Galway are going to Owenbeg to face Derry on Saturday at 2 p.m. in Group 2. And the other game is a big one. It's a watering game. Kilkenny against Waterford in Nolan Park at 12:30 on Saturday. This is the first of a doubleheader with the under-20 final between Kilkenny and Tipperary. So quite interesting games there, Jason. You would imagine Galway would beat Derry in the first game there. But Kilkenny and Waterford, this is a tight one to call. Waterford, obviously in their first game of the Camogie Championship, Kilkenny hammering Derry last weekend. How do you see this one going?
I think Galway will win against Derry up in Owenbeg. Lovely setting up there in Owenbeg, obviously. But and I don't want to knock Derry too much. The Laverty girls were some of my first guests on the podcast years ago. So there's a soft spot for them. But Galway just have too much in the tank and will probably win it comfortably. I think Kilkenny and Waterford, I still think Kilkenny are going to be thereabouts at the end, and good as Waterford are. Who was it for Kilkenny the last did the Steffi Fitzgerald.
Steffi Fitzgerald, yeah.
Yeah, just forever name coming up. Laura Murphy and the other girl who's I spotted Barco, Sarah Barco.
Sarah Barco, yeah.
Like they just did some very, very good players from what I saw, and they were so far ahead at the break that I think it's kind of comfortable enough for them at the moment, and I still think they'll take Waterford down. So Galway Kilkenny wins there.
Yeah, I'd probably go for Galway to win first game, obviously enough. And I actually back Waterford to win this game against Kilkenny. Niamh Rockett, Lorraine Bray, Beck Carton, they are still very good players in Waterford. And Kilkenny it'll be interesting to see what Kilkenny team does turn up, because last weekend, no disrespect obviously to Derry, but it wasn't really a test for this Kilkenny team. They scored a lot individually, like the likes of Barco and the likes of Fitzgerald and the likes of Katie Nolan and Sophie Holden, to be fair to her, but it just had the feel that Kilkenny were always going to win that game against Derry, and they will get a test, no doubt about it, this weekend. And just to mention it as well, there are other games as well up and down the country in the Intermediate Championship. There are 3 games happening this weekend. So Westmeath, Jason's own county, take on Meath in Group 1. That's at 2 p.m. on Saturday. You have Antrim against Offaly at 2 p.m. in Group 1. Antrim are the Division 1B champions in the league, and Offaly are Division 2A champions. So quite an interesting matchup there. And also at 3 p.m. on Saturday, you have Down against Kildare in the Camogie as well. Just a quick one, Westmeath against Meath. Are you hopeful about the Westmeath Camogie team this year?
Yeah, well, as the Westmeath Camogie PRO, I'll take the chance to plug them. We've I won't say double header, but it's not the ideal way to have it, because both Westmeath senior intermediate team play Meath. And at the same time, Westmeath also play Meath in the first ever under-23 All-Ireland Championship, which is a new setup this year. So we've Meath in both games. Unfortunately, we're down 18 faces from the team that won the Division 2A against Derry in Croke Park last year. We've 9 new faces in. Unfortunately, among those 18 that we don't have are Megan Dowdall and Sheila McGrath. Megan was the top scorer, I think, in the entire country last year. And Sheila is working in Dublin and was another phenomenal player. And between the two of them, they brought so much to it. And then goalkeeper Fiona Keating had to have back surgery as well. She is back training and back playing a little bit, but again, another big loss. And defensively, we've lost players as well. But there is plenty of good young players coming through, particularly the likes of Clare Gaffney as well, who'll be one to watch out for. She's a phenomenal camogie player, pacey, dual player as well. Won captained Westmeath underage to a ladies Leinster minor title a few years ago. And yeah, there's plenty of talent, and we've a couple of players back. I want to give a shout out as well to Mary Garrity, who will be senior player on the team. Didn't suit her to play last year. She came in this year and unfortunately was involved in a freak accident in training the other week, where got sandwiched in a tackle, ended up in ICU, and was actually very fortunate to still be with us. In many ways, ended up with a spleen injury, and is thankfully on the road to recovery, long road to recovery, but hopefully we'll see her back playing camogie again in the future. But so big test for Porry Connaughton, big test for Paddy Maloney, mentioned in her 23s. But good future, I think, for Westmeath camogie at the moment, even without our big names. It'll be up to the next generation to step up now, so hopefully
they will do well, and obviously best wishes to Garrity there, who was involved in that freak accident, and hopefully she does recover sooner rather than later. Obviously, just the NGFA as well, there are some games in intermediate as well. Monaghan face Cavan in the intermediate this weekend. Laois face Roscommon. Clare face Offaly. In the junior, you have Kilkenny against Limerick, Longford against Antrim, and Derry against Sligo. And in back to the intermediate, Jason's own county face Down in the intermediate championship. Westmeath intermediates, they won the Leinster title in intermediate level, so could they be on for a good year?
Yeah, I'm commentating on that one actually for the radio here, and looking forward to it. I would be one of the biggest supporters, I think, of the ladies team. Follow them around the place. They're some fantastic footballers. Fiona Coyle is captain this year from my brother's club there, St Mary's, Rochester Bridge. Fine footballer. We're having Lucy McCartan back in the team, of course, a Champions League footballer with Peamount as well. Her sister Lara's on the team, and we've brought in the likes of Grania Byrne from Milltown, who's got one of the best left foots, I would say, of any footballer in the country. And then you've Anna Jones, a veteran, I can call her that, but she is back to playing like she did a few years ago. Vicky Carr, Lucy Power. There's endless amount of names in that team, but there is a family coming through slowly on different age groups of Kilmurray's. Quiva has been in the team now for over a year, is one of the best young footballers you will ever see, and her sister Katie is frighteningly good. That's all I can say. At 15 years of age, a couple of years ago, she scored 3-2 in the first 10 minutes of a senior Division 2 final. And that tells you all you need to know about her and what's coming for the future. But Frank Brown's a great manager. Pat Garrity, the coach, has brought 4 of the starting 15 from nursery through to now as a coach. So he knows them inside out, and they're a great bunch. They're great crack. They're fine footballers, and I have high hopes from on Sunday against them.
Yeah, hopefully Westmeath ladies do well in the NLGFA Championship this year as well. So we are coming to the end of the podcast, and we just surpassed 2 hours. What a show. But thanks to Jason for coming on to the show today. Thanks for all the commenters that commented, including the likes of obviously Sean O'Malley, Brian O'Riordan, Rudders, who came in with a comment later on as well. Just to put it up, Cavan to shock Donegal wouldn't surprise me. Rudders probably watched the start of the show. Fair play to you, man, for staying up that long. Gavin O'Reilly commented as well. Sean O'Malley, as I mentioned there. Missing anybody? I think Aaron Graham was another one to comment on the show as well. And I think that's about it. So thanks to everybody that commented on the show to keep the show going. Thanks to Jason for coming on to the show. Thanks to Capture Letters for sponsoring today's show. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Ring the bell for any notifications on any new episodes coming out in the next few days or the next week or so. And until next week, we'll see you then. Take care. Enjoy the games of the weekend, and we'll see you in the next one.